Okay, how about a little river song here in the morning on Maui? That's River Song played on a 100-year-old beautiful antique Chicago guitar, we call them. Probably made by, we're not sure, Larson or one of those. It's unsigned, but it's a beauty. While I've got you here, I might as well jam something else. I'm just gonna see what happens here. This is kind of a blues. I've been working like in a G minor form with a capo on the 3rd fret. I've just been messing around in the yard at home with this thing. Let's see where it takes us. So that's your morning blues in the key of G minor, capo 3rd fret, from Maui, Hawaii. I just wanted to just sit out in the yard here and just play and see what comes up. So that's what I was feeling there. As I mentioned before, this is an old 100-year-old guitar that I was lucky enough to acquire when I was living in the Bay Area. And it just has a tone that's so warm and beautiful. I think you can appreciate the sound of it, especially on a Maui morning like this. The birds are singing and I'm sitting out in my yard, And this is pretty much what I do. I have my coffee and I just grab a guitar, whatever guitar's around. And today it was this one. And let's see what I can do for you. I'm just going to make something up and whatever comes to mind, see what happens, okay? So what am I going to do here? I'm going to play in the key of D. Boy, there's nothing like the sound of a beautiful old parlor guitar. This thing is such an antique. As I mentioned before, there's no signature on it, so all I know is that it was made in the 1920s in Chicago, which my understanding of Chicago guitars, we call them Chicago guitars, it could be a Larson, a Washburn, and in this case, an unsigned one, is that a lot of craftsmen and it could be violin builders, luthiers from the old country, somewhere in Europe, they settled in Chicago at that time, and I think rather than build just violins or whatever it is they're doing, they made these lovely instruments. And as you can see, I mean, the workmanship is just stunning, and it's not too fancy, you know. It's just right. It's got a little bit of detail, but it even sort of smells old. It's funny. It's got like a musty. I don't know if you've ever noticed a lot of the old Martins and stuff. Sometimes they just have you wonder where they've been, you know, like whose hands has this been in over the last over 100 years? Okay, so because yeah, it's been 100 years. It's pretty wild. So I'm going to give you one more before I go here, and I'm not even sure what it's going to be. I think I'm going to give you a little original song of mine. I'm just going to I might even try to sing it all on. My voice is pretty low right now. This one is called As I Make My Way. And the thing I like about this song, I wrote this song in an old hotel room in south of France when I was on tour over there back in the day when I used to tour Europe all the time. And I was missing home and missing things that, you know, family and all that. And so I wrote a song called As I Make My Way, and it's about wandering around as a minstrel, which is I've done most of my life, traveling, you know, the planet and playing music to people all over. And I actually played this song in an old, God, it was like almost 1,000-year-old church in Rockbrunn, in this little village I lived in. So the thing that's cool about this, though, is in the key of G. And although I play the chorus down here, and the verse, I wanted to sort of simulate the sound of a capo, which, you know, I've used a lot. And so, but I didn't want to use a capo. I wanted to be free to go up and down. So I did it like this. Well, I was as lost and lonely as one man could be, with something deep inside between you and me. I wandered far and wide all across this land, only to return with my heart down in my hands, as I make my way, as I make my way, oh yeah, as I make my way. On back to you. So it was a little piece of As I Make My Way, and I've actually given some lessons on that in the past in some of my courses, and the thing I like about it is moving up and down the neck. So even though it's in the key of G, I use this sort of third position with an open G. It looks like that. But what's cool about it is I decided to take that G, those three strings, and then jump up to a C note on the low E string to get that walk down. So it's like and then to a D. A couple ways to do that, right? You can do that way. Or you can go up here. Sorry. I think that's a fun way to do it. It's a little bit of a stretch, but it's cool. I just kind of stumbled on that too. It's funny. As I mentioned, I was sitting in an old hotel room in a town called Roquebrune, France, which is in the south of France, where I was on tour over there with my band, the guys from the Robert Cray Band. It was a fabulous tour. We went all the way from Amsterdam, all the way to Rome and back, and from Czechoslovakia and Prague all the way to London. It was one of those long, kind of went from winter into spring. Yeah, I really remember that fondly, though. It was my first, on my own, first tour of Europe. I toured with Clarence Clemens before that. Obviously, Clarence has a big name with Springsteen and everything, sax player. And so I got to see Europe through the lens of a side musician playing with a big band, playing on some big festival stages. And then I decided, well, I did my first album, Bad and Blue, with, as I mentioned, the guys from the Cray Band, the Robert Cray Band, as my backing band, Kevin Hayes and Richard Cousins, Jimmy Pugh, and a lot of other great musicians from the Bay Area. Clarence Clemens, actually, from the E Street Band, he played saxophone on my opening cut. And what happened is I got a record deal. I went over to Europe, and I was at the Montreux Jazz Festival. I decided, well, if I'm going to make a footprint in Europe, I want to start at the top. So I went to the Montreux Jazz Festival and booked a room at the Palace Hotel, and it was like this amazing experience. And everybody from Van Morrison to you name it, the Montreux Jazz Festival was the granddaddy of all festivals. It was, it's like Newport in America. It's been around for ages. This guy Claude Nobbs runs it. And so I was fortunate to have sort of jumped into the pond right there with a whole bunch of great musicians, great acts that were playing. They have different kinds of music every night, Celtic music, blues music. So everybody you can think of was there, B.B. King, everybody, Johnny Cash. And it was fun. And so I got a gig at a place called Harry's Bar, which is in the basement of the Palace Hotel. And the Palace Hotel, that's at the center of Montreux. And after every show, a lot of people would come back to the bar and hang out. So it was really fortuitous for me because I was playing with a buddy on piano, my buddy Austin Dillon, who's played with everybody from Costello to the T-Birds. So the two of us were playing a little duet, and I was basically handing out my business card and like that, and giving people my CDs, trying to make some inroads into Europe, because I really had this desire I wanted to be the roots musician from America playing Europe. And it's funny because I was just recently talking to my buddy Dan about that because he toured over there later, and he said, you kind of caught the last wave of touring in Europe. The last, Europe has a real romance with Americans' roots music, whether it's country, blues, jazz, as you know. And so it was fun to be there before the EU. So all the currencies and everything were still in place. I really appreciate that because you go into Italy, you have to, yeah, you got to cross the border and you have to exchange your money and all that. But to me, that was kind of the I don't know, that was sort of the romance of being in Europe, to go from country to country and experience all the different cultures, the way people, understand music, the way they receive music is so totally different in each country. In France and Italy, and in Italy it's like all about the food, in France as well. In Germany, they love their American rock and roll, and they love their blues. That's for sure. And I found that quite often I'd play these concerts, and it got bigger and bigger as time went by. I ended up going from playing little joints in Salzburg, Austria, to all the way to the big stage with Joe Cocker and Dr. John and Shaka Khan at this place called Vaduz in Liechtenstein, which is right next to Switzerland. So I kind of went the whole gamut from the smallest places, tiny little places you wouldn't believe how small they are, all the way to the big stage. I got to tour with Buddy Guy over there and Luther Allison and all these different kind of heroes of mine, really. So that's really just a story about how that song came to be. As I Make My Way was really I'd been over there for, God, I think over 6 weeks on tour. That's a pretty long time for me anyway. And went from the middle of the winter all the way to spring. Went from like freezing cold up in the mountains of Austria to all the way down to Rome, where it was warm and springtime was blooming. So and I spent the 90s touring in Europe on my own with my band. I did 4 CDs over there, got a record deal, and it was really a fun just fun adventure, and it was really a dream realized for me, because playing in the States is great, of course, but playing over there as an American, for me, was it was just kind of a dream come true, I guess. It's something I really wanted to do, because I'd heard about the jazz people, all the old jazz, African American jazz, if he's experts, really. I mean, he's like the top of their game in the 20s and 30s, the Hot Club in Paris and all that. So there was some monster jazz people that launched over there, but also there was some rock and rollers that got their start over across the pond too. Jimi Hendrix, most notably, he got his start in England. He was discovered by Chas Chandler, bass player for the Animals. And my partner Ozzy Allers got a chance to meet and see Hendrix in some of his first engagements in Europe, out there in I think it was, I'm trying to remember the name of the town. It's some little town out. You can look it up, actually. And he played with Cream, and I think it was just Cream and Hendrix, yeah. And Ozzy got to see them before he was known, before he was a big star. And I saw him in '68 in Chicago, so that was like a year later. So in '67 he was breaking in England, and then eventually played, actually I think the same year, played the Monterey Jazz Festival, which was where he first set his guitar on fire, and Mamas and the Papas and Otis Redding and all that. So anyway, I'm just reminiscing today. I'm rambling on, but I'm a rambler, what can I tell you? Before I leave you, I'm going to play whatever comes to mind. I don't even know what I'm going to do yet. I think it's going to be a little bluesy, though. Thus concludes my Maui morning rambles. Thus concludes my morning, oh, I can't say it. My Maui morning ramblings. There, I did it. And there'll be more to come. This is like kind of backyard stuff. And I think I'm going to, when I wake up in the morning, I'm just going to send you guys some whatever's on my mind. And we'll have some guitar stuff, maybe a little lesson here and there, maybe just some musings. See what inspires me that day. See you down the road.